Welcome back to the Takeout. A Senate committee held a hearing today to discuss possible reforms to college athletics to protect players both during their athletic careers and after. Yesterday, I spoke with Collis Temple, who was a part of today's hearing. He was the first Black player for LSU varsity basketball in the early 1970s. Really just want to start off with this issue of student athletes. Are student athletes still student athletes, or are college athletics now just almost like a professional league?
Things are really evolving in an amazing way because there's a major debate going on across the nation and across the spectrum of college athletics. And the question is, do we have these young folk playing and their priorities or athletics, or is their priority school? And how long will this process take place before there's a clearing of what has to take place to make sure that we're in a better place for these student athletes?
What more specifically are you hoping to see from lawmakers on Capitol Hill?
Well, I think that it's important at this juncture that some safeguards are put in place to help with the process of making sure that student athletes have the proper opportunity to participate in this college athletic piece and get them prepared to move on in life. Sports is a short-term piece that will fade away much sooner than later. And then all of the college athletes have a lifetime of experiences to look forward to. So the preparation is so important, and just like in any other venue, when you talk about a scientist, a mathematician, or an accounting person, you get this baseline of experience in college, and that's what propels you to have a lifetime of success. And so most of the athletes are not going to play professional sports. So it's far more important for them to be student athletes first.
And in terms of being those students, I know two of your sons actually played basketball at LSU before we saw some of the changes that we're now witnessing kind of in this current environment. Do you wish or think they should have been compensated for their play?
It would have been great for them to be compensated. The reality of it is that at that particular time, the concept was making sure that the student athlete was prepared for life after athletics. And so it was important. It was a part of the mantra in my household to get my sons to understand that you use college athletics as a means to an end and not an end within itself. And so that's really important. And like I said, 99.9% of the young men and young women who play college sports will not become professional athletes. So the key is they need to become professional people, and that's why this process of talking about making sure that things are put in a proper perspective are done right now for the future of college athletics, for the future of high school athletics, because this can bleed into a lot of areas that will cause a real stain on this process.
As we mentioned at the top, you became the first Black varsity basketball player at LSU. Take me back to your time there back in the early 70s, and how have things evolved in your view in terms of college athletics in this landscape?
Well, when you talk in terms of the timeline that I was involved in, I went to LSU on the heels of a lot of racial issues and a lot of racial unrest in our country, because right after Martin King was killed in the spring of '68 and after the Olympic exercises in Mexico City in '68, and the guys who raised their fists in protest to what was going on in this country, there were a lot of challenging times that were involved in my life. And of course, it's changed quite a bit. But as I look at the landscape of what's taking place now, it in many instances it's almost a repeat performance. Because when you talk about the social unrest that's taken place in our country in the last couple of years, it likens itself to what took place back in the late 60s, early 70s. So I guess history maybe repeats itself, sort of. You know, that's one way to look at it.
And finally, I guess, what do you hope, or what would you like to see in the future going forward?
Well, I'm hoping that that just from a sociological standpoint and an economic standpoint, that that the young athletes that are given an opportunity to play in college uh, learn to become responsible adults and learn to be people who turn into assets for themselves and to their families, and you know, make the best of an opportunity to be a college athlete. I hope that that we can improve on those opportunities. If you go back and reflect on professional sports, it's unfortunate that the majority of the African American athletes who are fortunate enough to play in college and then get to a level of professional sports, over 50% of these young folk are financially insecure, and they have major problems throughout their lives, challenges of not being able to attain the kind of success that you would hope that they would be able to do. So it's about more than money. It's about a process of learning to become a responsible person, and that's a challenge, especially when you put a lot of money in front of guys whose families nor themselves know how to manage those resources.
Yeah, very valid point. Well, I would be remiss on a much lighter note, since we're in the middle of March Madness, if I did not ask you who you have winning the tournament. Who's in your bracket? I assume yours is not busted yet, like mine.
I'm looking at Arizona, but you know, there's anything can happen in March when it comes to college basketball.
That's right. Well, we have part of the Sweet 16 here in Washington, as well as you. We thank you so very much for joining us, Collis Temple.
I certainly appreciate this opportunity to sit with you, and go LSU Tigers.